My name is Stacy Renee. I'm a mindset coach, a life coach, a life on life's terms coach. I had somebody say that to me, and life is life. And so I had one of my clients say that to me this week. Life is life. And so, welcome to tonight to the YouTube Live here at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. I want to thank you for joining. Thank you all who have subscribed to this channel. I'm always grateful for those of you who choose to stay here because you have so many other algorithms you can feed, and to feed this algorithm means so much to me. So thank you so much. So tonight, what our topic is when pain turns into punishment. And I've got my notes here because after people come on, then I'm going to be able to, be able to talk further and deeper about this. So pain becomes punishment until you heal. Until you heal. Thank you there for those hearts. Is that Kim? Is that Angie? Who is this? Is it Pam? So anyway, Kim, hello. You got backup tonight too. How are you and your beautiful self and your beautiful mama doing? And Mr. Raymond, is he joining us this evening? Hello, beautiful. So we're talking about when pain becomes punishment. When we give people the business. So we're going to talk about that tonight. Not all like we've already talked about, just a little different aspect. I said something to somebody. I had a client yesterday. I said this too. I said, and we're going to talk about that in this evening is that I said, when kids feel unwanted. John London, hello, darling. It's good to see you. So when I was talking to someone last night, I told him, I said, the thing is when kids feel unwanted, they grow up into adults. You stayed home from the hospital today to rest. Mom is getting her IV. Yeah, there's nothing you can do right now. Good. Everybody's in good shape today. I'm glad you got some rest. So what I was telling the client last night, I said, when we feel unwanted as children or young adults, or in any kind of relationship for that matter, but especially as children, that first 1 to 12 years. And I talked the other day about how people have said some horrible things to people. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Is it cooled off a little bit for you, John London? And happy 4th of July weekend, Kim, and all those in the United States. It's about freedom. It's about freedom. And that's kind of what I talk about on here weekly, is about how we can gain mental and emotional freedom from this crazy world, right? So when pain becomes punishment, because we are all going to experience pain, we are. Like I said, Wednesday, I don't know if you all saw Wednesdays. I think you did, John. And you did too, Kim, because you moderated. So thank you. So, this is why I keep notes. Because we talked about if you're breathing, you have probably been a victim, either mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, or financially. If you're breathing, you've probably been a victim. And sometimes when we feel victimized, we want to punish somebody else, but sometimes we feel like it's a punishment to us. So this is why we're leading into the pain becomes punishment until you heal. John London, yep, feeling like a cool summer now. I did not go to the beach or enjoy the beach today. I'm staying off that beach right now because we got something down here called sargasso. And if you don't know what that is, that's some of the sea life, the plants that are beneath the sea. And they're being killed off by these chemicals that get put in the sea. And then when it washes up on shore, and it washes up a lot over here, and at certain seasons. And so it used to not come like 5 years ago, but it's gotten progressively worse through the years because of contaminated water, And so it's coming up and it stinks. It's nasty. And yeah, so I haven't been going to the beach. All right. So pain becomes punishment unless you heal. So, in short, like this morning, how many of y'all have experienced this? Can come out as passive aggressive or aggressive aggressive. Adults, trying to punish each other. I've been dealing with people trying to punish people. There's been people with a job that have been punished with not receiving their wages. Yeah, that stinks. Yes. So you know what I'm talking about, John London. Yes, it's awful. So sometimes it can be financial punishment, is in the pain. And the punishment is sometimes if people don't like that you're not buying their narrative or co-signing their BS, then you could get punished financially, you could get punished emotionally, you could get punished mentally. So there's that kind of punishment to where they're taking things away from you because you didn't act the way they wanted you to act, behave they wanted you to behave. Because if you tried to be, to be in yourself and your own desires, then that wasn't convenient for them. So there's that kind of punishment where we have that with adults doing that. I have a very popular video that has over 100 likes on it about punishing adults, the adults punishing adults or something like that. I can't remember what it's called. I recorded it like 5-6 years ago. So what we're going to look at today is, who am I really punishing? If you've had children, when we punish our children, we're kind of punishing ourselves because we get to deal with them saying, I'm bored. Yep, unfortunately, people can be very spiteful and mean. Absolutely. And what I was telling that client was, unwanted children who felt unwanted growing up feel like adults who are unwanted. It doesn't just go away because we have these adult bodies. And this is oftentimes where we can fall prey to, proving our unwantedness. We may be proving our unwantedness. I'm going to get into this further, but we may be proving that. We may be choosing and allowing relationships to where we allow ourselves to feel that way over and over again. And that's why we think it's our identity. But we have to be willing to see our own wins, and in the client last night, we're working on weight. And so that person getting to see their own wins, and being able to feel what feels good to me and what doesn't feel good to me. And if you're being punished by another adult or even punished by your children or punished by somebody, that does not feel good. So we can tend to take on guilt. We talked about that. So anyway, let me dive into this so it doesn't sound like everything else that I talked about, because it's not. It's another tweak on it, because a lot of the things may sound the same, but it's different aspects of the same behavior a lot of times. So most people think that punishment is something that they do to someone else. But what if you've been punishing yourself for years without realizing it? You feel unwanted daily. Needed this. Well, I'm glad you're here. Always glad you're here. So thank you, Kim. So what if you're punishing yourself without realizing it, y'all? Sometimes we're doing that. Like I have said to you, Kim, proving it to ourselves. Hello, J.S. Sun Stillwells. How are you doing today? The topic is when pain turns into punishment. Sometimes we punish ourselves and we don't realize we're punishing ourselves. I talked the other day about cutting off your nose to spite your face. And that's kind of where we're punishing ourselves, right? So what if you're punishing yourself without even realizing you're punishing yourself? Sometimes these belief systems or these triggers will cause us to behave a certain way, react a certain way, and then we're like, and we should on people because we want to be taken care of. We want to be considered, but we haven't learned how to express our needs. So maybe you're carrying guilt over something you did years ago. I have some clients that carry guilt over something they did years ago. And so they're still punishing themselves for something that they did years ago. And so it's about breaking that cycle, is to, be able first off to see I'm punishing myself for something that I did years ago. I have a belief somewhere underneath this that's making me feel horrible. And I'm just subjecting and accepting this is my lot in life, but it doesn't have to be. We can quit punishing ourselves and punishing other people once we can be aware of it. Wakadawada. Thank you so much. Did I say that right? Wakadawada. Now, why no? New Zealand. I would love if I could hear you talk. I love to hear these different accents. I've got amazing people. John London's accent. Kim and I talk alike because we're both from the South. So John London, sometimes we want to continue to feel bad in order to prove our mind's right, or feel valid in feeling pain still. Yeah, and the problem is that we carry that energy with us. So then we may say, because somebody asked me to talk about trying to love again this evening. They're not here yet, but they did ask me to speak on that. And so the thing is that we are carrying this energy with us. And like I say, your feelings are reflections of your body language. So sometimes we're playing like small, even in just our body language, while we're trying to think larger. And so this is when we're not in alignment with what is. So thank you. Thank you, Wakawada. Wak 801. So And you're right, John London and Kim. So I'm glad y'all are all here this evening. So maybe you're accepting poor treatment because somewhere deep inside you believe you deserve it. Some people have been told you don't deserve it. You don't deserve it. So they get this imprint going on that you don't deserve it or that you have to earn respect. We were all born to be respected. Do you have to earn respect? That's a tricky slope because I just give people respect until unless there's not a reason to. But even I think when there's not a reason to, I still choose to respect. Respect may not look like what they want respect to look like bowing down and cowering, but we don't have to earn certain things. Some things are your God-given right, and some things you were born with. And so why would you need to earn why do I need if I think somebody else needs to earn respect, then I feel like I have to earn respect, right? Because how do we do that? So when we realize what we put off or what we expect from somebody else is what we need to work on, maybe, if we feel like we're not getting that. So maybe you're stuck in relationships where love is given and taken away like a reward, and you've confused anxiety with passion. John London, true. I do believe we carry pain in our aura and must cleanse our inner energetic fields so it's not projected outwards as victimhood or anything. You're so right, because we will passively, aggressively, when we haven't healed these wounds, we'll be like, we'll act insecure. And I'll give an example of this. When I was my first love, and I lost my first love, and dark personalities will pick up that stuff. And yes, they do. They know, they can tell by your body language when you're insecure. So my first love, one time, he said, well, we're going to be together. I forgot what we were talking about, but he's like, we're going to be together forever, aren't we? But I was insecure. I had wanted to be together forever with him, but I was like, I guess so, and that's what I mean by when we're, when we're confused about these things. Because when we say these things, the other person's like, you guess so. Well, what am I doing here if you just guess so, right, John London? So we need to be sure about ourselves, because if we show up unsure, like you said, John London, that energy projects back and forth how we behave. If we think so let me keep on with my notes here before I get too far out there. So maybe someone keeps using your past against you. J.S. and Stillwell. I was told by my mother, her sister, that respect wasn't given, it was earned, and I hadn't earned it. That's so sad, because everybody deserves respect. You were born worthy and you were born valuable, and that's an old tape. I'm not trying to say you're all these people, but that's the thing, is that's how transgenerational trauma and this trying to prove ourselves gets passed down, because you felt like you had to prove your respect, right? Prove yourself to earn that respect. And this is why people turn themselves into pretzels, and some people will never recognize it. John London, I hear that, the anxious, avoidant, or insecure attachment styles dynamics. Exactly. I work with some people with anxious attachment style. I had a client today, and she's like, she says, I'm just so glad I have you, because sometimes we don't talk about too much. You always have to give respect to get it. Well, that's a natural. I think we all need to give respect. Why would we give somebody the business when we don't know them or they haven't done anything to us? I think that respect is our human condition. We all, but it's the connotations that have been attached. Some people have had respect just pounded into them like that. And it's not supposed to be a punishment. So a lot of people are punishment by somebody, they may not have the definition of what do I do to earn respect? So people turn themselves into pretzels and don't know. So, I had an interesting interaction one time in New Orleans. I was in New Orleans, and I needed directions, and this lady was walking down the street, and she was a different race than me. And I said, excuse me, ma'am, can you tell me? And she walked by me like she was a zombie, like she did not even recognize me. But I had to think about that. I mean, I was like, oh, because I grew up in Texas, and I used to hear people saying they didn't even acknowledge me, and they thought that was a sign of respect. And so I had to sit here and digest this in my head. I had to think about this a minute. I wasn't mad at her. I just thought, isn't that odd? I had to as I sometimes say with what the old folks used to say, ponder it. I had to ponder it. And she just walked right by and didn't acknowledge it. And I'm like, wow. Because at one time in life, that's the way that she might have been treated. That's the way her family might have been treated. And so that's the way she treated me. But it didn't have anything to do with respect or anything. I didn't take it that way. I took it like, oh, isn't that interesting? And so if we think of these behaviors and we're not demanding that approval from other people, and sometimes that approval comes with respect, right? If we're not demanding other people approve of us or buy into our stuff, hi, Jeremy, thank you. Then we will, when we come up with our own feelings for ourselves, you see, if I would have been insecure with myself, I might have thought, why is she not talking to me? But I'm a grown woman. And it's like, oh, she don't have to talk to me. There's nothing here that says that she has to speak to me. That's okay. So I didn't get mad about it. I didn't think, oh, she disrespected me. For a minute, it took me back. But so this is what I'm talking about is when we start healing, we don't let these things freak us out or have us misbehaving or have us feeling bad about ourselves because somebody didn't speak to us, because somebody didn't do this. So here's the truth. Punishment doesn't heal pain. Now, maybe the lady was trying to punish me for what, I don't know, or maybe I don't think she was, though. I think she was just being hurt and I was just being me. And so it's like, oh, okay. So punishment doesn't heal pain. So getting mad at that lady or getting mad at anybody will not heal that pain. It keeps pain alive. So when somebody's done something and then we say something to them like, and they say, are you okay? Is there something wrong? And we're like, you should know. You should know. That's our inner child acting up and saying that we want somebody to love and nurture us, but we're actually putting people off to where they don't want to love and nurture you when you're like saying, you should know. When I'm talking about using our big girl and big boy words, we need to be able to say things. And we're going to get to that later on in this. But, about our definitions, being able to define things ourselves without, like what Jason Stilwell said, is that, that's been passed down about people, I've seen people get in people's faces and say, you will respect me. And it's like, you don't demand respect. You don't. So healing begins when we stop trying to make someone else hurt the way we hurt. And when we stop believing we have to keep suffering from our past, for our past. So we're going to talk about why we punish ourselves, why we punish others, and how guilt, victimhood, codependency, and attachment wounds, like John London said, those attachment styles and dynamics, connect us, and how we can break free from that. So if you've ever struggled with guilt, shame, unhealthy relationships, people pleasing, or wondering why you keep repeating the same patterns, then here we grow. So what we're going to explore tonight is why people punish themselves and others, the connection between guilt and shame and control, and how narcissistic and codependent dynamics are built around punishment and power, and why unresolved childhood wounds show up in adult relationships, and trauma bonding, and anxious attachment and avoidant attachment, and the difference between accountability and lifelong self-punishment, and how healthy boundaries and honest communication break the cycle. So when I was talking about the client I had earlier and her talking about, I'm not letting you go, she's like, because I have clients, and we work on the anxious attachment style. I convince them, or they convince themselves. I remind them they are the prize. And then they remember they are the prize. And then they get in relationships. So then they don't need me anymore when they get the relationships. But come 6 months, maybe a year down the road for, one or two of them, they're going to come back and they're going to be back in that same loop of that anxiety because they have trained yet they've managed to fall back into it, because codependency is so hard. If the anxious attachment is linked with codependency, it's very hard not to fall back into. So healing begins when we stop trying to control others and stop allowing others to control us through guilt and build a relationship with ourselves based on that trust and self-respect. Self-respect, because when you respect yourself, no one has to earn respect. You have to get your own respect, and you have to respect yourself, because that respect coming outside of you is going to come some days and some days it's not. And are you going to allow that to cause you to twist off? So let's play the tape backwards. On Wednesday, we talked about if we are a victim or not. And what comes along with being a victim, having that victim mindset is, is it fault or blame? It's usually fault or blame. So on Monday night, we talked about what we're powerless over and what we do have power over. Okay. That was something else popping up on the screen. What we do have power over, 100%, the cycle or pattern repeats if we forget to be aware of the signs in us. Exactly. Thank you, John London. Exactly, because we can think, oh, I'm over it, and then just like skedaddle. And then, like I say, some of them end up coming back because they'll find themselves back in that same cycle. And I mean, that's good because it's still improvement. It's still improvement. And it is. It's about progress over perfection. So that on Monday night, we talked about, if we're powerless and over what, and if we do what we do have power over. So power and victimization are linked. Being victimized has often left us feeling powerless, and associating certain character defects is our identification until it's completely healed, like a course of antibiotics. Exactly. Like, right, John London, because when we take antibiotics, a lot of people, when they start feeling better, they don't take the antibiotics anymore, and then they may get sick again here shortly after. Exactly. That's a good analogy of that. Jason Stillwell, this is a topic I'm interested in. I'm anxious, preoccupied, and my lady friend is fearful, avoidant, but somehow we are working through things and affirming each other, but I need to learn more. All right. Well, I'm glad you're here, Jason Stillwell. All right. So power and victimization are linked because being victimized often has left us feeling powerless, and associating certain character defects is our identification. So wherever we may feel like we're guilty or failed at something before, we may be identified. So that makes us more likely to be victimized, which makes us feel like we deserve a punishment or that we had to earn something or this type of thing. So it's a feeling and not an identification. It's just a feeling, not an identification. And our feelings can change. Feelings aren't facts, but they deserve to be looked at and validated and examined because they're your feelings, and we need to acknowledge those. And so this guilt may have been something that we carry or not aware of. So please look at the past videos for more information on that to avoid this sounding redundant, when we talk about the guilt, because I have other videos on earned guilt and unearned guilt. So we're going to move forward. We also discussed cutting off our noses to spite our face and how that means that we, in essence, are punishing ourselves, trying to inflict pain on another. So the single word for this is spite. Spite. Can we act out of spite singularly? No, there's always another person, and this is why we're talking about taking a deeper dive into punishing ourselves and to others, because there's always another person. If somebody's feeling victimized, there's a villain usually in that mindset. So in being punished, it's like that too. So I have a friend now that has relapsed on pain meds, I do believe. And I've admitted that when I was in my addiction, I had a narcissistic behavior because we just want what we want when we want it. And we just want certain things. And so there's, something. And so it's that immaturity. So meaning a return to unhealed wounds and trying to control others and punish them for my pain in order to avoid it while accelerating it. Does that make sense? Did y'all get that? So this is what I did in my addiction. Now, addiction can be food, shopping, drugs, alcohol, sex, there's a lot of infidelity in the sex addiction and other things. There's even an Underachievers Anonymous. So I don't want to, narcissist. So I'm going to say that again because it could kind of sound confusing. So when we are in our addiction, whatever it is, it's meaning a return to unhealed wounds and trying to control others and punish them for my pain in order to avoid it while accelerating it. So it's this, we're going from one extreme to the other. It's this irrationality. So narcissists repulse people. They punish people. And I don't want to stick to the they behavior so much as that's not empowering. I do want to acknowledge what this behavior looks like and how we can stick to our truth and not react to others punishing us. And if we have ever dealt with this, you may have felt like you deserve poor behavior. You might have felt like you deserved it because they're going to tell you you don't deserve it. I've had narcissists tell me that if I wanted something, you don't deserve it, and that's not true. It wasn't true because I did deserve it. I did deserve what I wanted. I didn't deserve to be punished. So, so you may have felt like you deserved poor behavior because they are sure to tell you that you don't deserve it, whatever it is. So I also know a significant group of people that have not received their pay instead of the company acknowledging that they just don't have the money. They're accusing them of doing things that they're doing, projection that they're doing, and punishing these other people. So I've been there also. So this is behavior that breeds, as my mama would say, hate and discontent. So in both of those examples that I used, this is behavior that breeds hate and discontent. And if you don't have the money, just saying, I wish I had the money. I hate, but it's taking responsibility, right? And so sometimes you get punished when somebody else doesn't want to take responsibility, is all that I'm saying. And sometimes you want somebody else to take responsibility and you may punish them. So it could go both ways. Is that helping so far, Jason? Jason's son Stillwell. So when discussing being a victim, financial abuse is a big one with narcissism, just so you know. So what happens is in the beginning, these folks are really nice, and as time goes by, it looks like they no longer recognize your value. And as you silently disappear and find what does resonate with you and what no longer works with you, you will be cast as a villain. And they will say they are a victim, and you will punish you by means of money. They may begin to lie about you when they sense your distance and you want what is yours, whether it be freedom, money, or autonomy. Some people, autonomy is a word that's worth getting to learn, worth a word getting to know, because this is you and yourself, your autonomy, what you want, what you need, and you desire. And those things are important. Sometimes when you're dealing with some people, they want to take away these things from you. Sometimes you want to take these away from other people by means of withholding love or withholding, something else, giving them the business. That's withholding love, withholding dialogue. Yeah, I've lost so much in the past 10 years. Yeah. Yeah, because they will want to take them away. And so, by means of money, they may begin to lie. Okay, so I read that part. Your autonomy. They may in reverse say that you owe them, and that's their all-time favorite is, people with these traits will say, you owe me this, you owe me that. And if we're saying that, we need to take a look at ourselves if we think everybody owes us something. What's cool is that with my relationship with Source is this person may owe me money, but I know that I'm going to get it, but it might not be from that person, right? Is I know that in this universal law, that's what's mine is going to come to me. And I don't have to give somebody else the business or my faith and my trust because they aren't my business, my faith, and my trust. So when I have my business and my faith and my trust in the source, then I have to know and trust that everything's going to come back around as it needs to come back around and not giving others my power, because we've talked about that earlier this week. So there's so much ick attached, to that kind of behavior though. And so when people say that you owe them and you don't owe them anything, and that's ick attached to it. So you don't know what is going on, and you may buy into that narrative and may be punishing yourself when somebody's telling you you owe them all the time. You owe them, you owe them. No, no. We can respect. I want respect, so I'm going to respect other people, even if they're not nice to me, because just because they're not nice to me doesn't indicate that's about me. That indicates that's about them. That has nothing to do with me. So that's one concept of this, and how narcissistic and codependent relationships are built. The codependent second guesses and will take on others' opinions of themselves. That's right, John London. What is meant for us will not miss us. And I have faith in that. And see, that's why but we have to heal that lack mentality to know that, right? As I have had to work on lack mentality, I still work on that lack, because when we have that lack, we're afraid we're not going to get something. I used to have my shopping addiction was that if I didn't buy it right now, I was afraid I wasn't going to get it in my shopping addiction. So that had me in my shopping addiction. If I don't get it now, this is a good price. If I don't get it now, you know, and then my bank account didn't look as pretty. And then in my other addictions, that's I need this, I need to have it now because instant gratification is a thing in that. So what if you're punishing yourself through past guilt over and over? Some people that I've worked with have punished themselves for past guilt over and over. So this happens also. You may have apologized what seems like 100 times, right? But still allow something to be held over your head. I know this is pretty predominant in parents and kids, and they use the grandchildren a lot of times that the grandparent won't get to see the grandchildren if they make the parent mad, their child mad. So this happens a lot, and they will hold things over their head. And I've seen these people, still dealing with all kinds of behaviors from people because they're afraid of not getting to see the grandchildren. They're afraid of the kid not talking to them again, the grown kid. Hello, Shadow Minion. So what are we afraid of? Or, some people may be afraid if I upset this friend, then the whole friend group's going to get mad at me, right? Or if I upset this person, then it's going to upset the whole people and all of this. So it's about learning to set our loving boundaries. So you may apologize about what seemed like 100 times, but still allow something to be held over your head. You might have been really guilty. You might have done something that you are guilty of. But once we apologize, we talked about just apologizing and making amends a few weeks ago. Again, go back to those other videos. But an amends means that I'm just not going to do the same thing over. But see, as long as you keep doing the same thing, the person who's holding this over your head is going to do the same thing. The amends means changing your behavior, not trying to get them to change the way they treat you. So they may still be mad. I had to learn myself that they are not going to change just because I allow myself, I do what they say. I sign, okay, sign here. Okay, I sign there. And then I'm not getting something that I was entitled to because I gave away that so that somebody else wouldn't be mad at me, and they were still mad at me, right? A family member thing. So the feeling's going to be the same to honor yourself. In talking yesterday, it's like we can worry, and faith have the same energy level in a way that they have the same thing, the same turnout is what I'm trying to say. They're going to turn out the same way. But worrying is going to take a lot of negative energy, and just having faith, because it's all going to work out like John London says, what's meant for us won't miss us, but it ain't going to come like that, maybe. I mean, that's my experiences, is that I can't twitch my nose and then have it come. So, how long are you going to allow others to control you through your guilt and live miserably? How long? So, and what I want to know is, do you think that's what your source, whoever you perceive your source to be, because we don't talk about religion here, but I do believe in spirituality, and I do believe that we have a source myself, and I'm not going to call it, but do you think that's the way that your source, your God, your whoever wants you to feel about yourself, and to see that happening? I had to be told one time that, Stacy, it ain't spiritual to be abused. It's not spiritual to be abused. Not verbally abused, not physically abused, not emotionally or mentally abused. John Lydon, like equal opposites. That's insightful on worry versus faith, dark versus light. Exactly. It's those polarities. I love polarities. And in between, there's harmony. Because in reality, there is worry and there is faith, but in between is harmony. Do we need to be concerned about something? Maybe give it a little concern. But do we also need to have faith? Yeah. So in the middle, we come up with concern and then go about our business knowing that we have no control, no power over those things, right? Is the only power we have is maybe talking to our source for most things. And even in that, if we do have power, I've learned that I have talked to source to figure out what I need to do my breathing, to be in my right mind and my body and not coming out of reaction, but being able to respond to whatever's happening. Sometimes I've had to pray about something for 2 days so that I didn't twist off reacting, like when the neighbor cut my bougainvilleas. So if so, maybe it's time to build a deeper relationship with source. And so what are some of the ways that we punish ourselves for our past? What are some of the ways we punish ourselves for the past? Do we allow people to be mean to us thinking that we deserve it? And the anxious and avoided attachment, a lot of times I'm going to get into that in a minute. So let me stick with my notes so I don't get off and then come back to it and sound repetitive. So I want to be mindful of your time here. I thank you so much for being here. Jason Stillwell, that's why I love my ladies so much. When I'm punishing myself without cause, she'll cut me off and say, stop persecuting yourself. That's great, Jason. And I'm glad that you're stopping that, because you don't need to keep punishing yourself. I've seen people punish themselves and I can't stop them. I'm glad you're listening to her. I couldn't stop them from punishing themselves. Now in coaching, I can, because they're more willing if they're talking to a coach. But in the past, I had a relationship where I would see that person punishing themselves, and they even likened themselves to Wile E. Coyote. He said, I'm like Wile E. Coyote. I'll get mad and go light a stick of dynamite and blow myself up, So y'all know that I get questioned on my arrogance with my relationship with Source. What are some of the ways we punish ourselves from the past? One is, as I've said before, silent suffering. So sometimes this is a passive aggressive behavior when we're doing the silent suffering, because we're just like carrying this grudge, this anger, this guilt from the past, even some resentment from the past. And so we're still carrying it until we heal it and work on that healing and quit projecting that pain that somebody else caused me this pain, and have owning that sense of pain. I have a pain because I felt unwanted, like Kim said earlier. I felt unwanted and I still feel unwanted today, because children who felt unwanted are going to grow into adults who feel unwanted. Children who are afraid of being abandoned are going to grow into adults who are afraid of being abandoned. It just doesn't go away like that. So one, as I've said before, is silent suffering. We regress back to the child that feared getting in trouble. So remember being a child, fearing getting in trouble, and how you were just like quiet. I'm not going to rock the boat. I'm going to be on eggshells. And we just turn to that quiet, because it's been proven that in childhood trauma, that a child's brain stops. This is why a lot of times when I'm working with people who had that child abuse of whatever form, that I ask them, did you write a note to the perpetrator? Did you ever write a letter? Not to say that they're going to give it to them, but to write a letter to get it out of their system, the feelings that they had behind it. And they don't know how to express those feelings when they've been abused. And we don't know how to express it as adults, because that part of our brain shut down to where at that time we didn't learn it, so we get to learn it now. This comes from The Body Keeps the Score, if you want reference to that. So, thinking of the ways we punish ourselves, silent suffering, we regress back to the child who feared getting in trouble, and we just stopped because we didn't have the words in one way. So typically, though we want a payoff, we want to be compensated for our pain, as we may have that may have been a learned behavior, to be compensated for our pain. Has anyone ever had someone in their life go off, punish the person, then maybe they went silent and withheld love, and then come back with a reward? That's happened to me. Anybody else here? That happened to me. Like my dad used to be quiet, and then we'd get in trouble, and then we'd get a reward. And so did some of my adult relationships were like that, I would get in trouble. They'd get mad at me for some reason, and then they'd be silent, and then they'd give me a reward later. So this is how you may end up actually addicted to this person. Here we go, Jason Stillwell. So this is how we may end up actually addicted, but it doesn't sound like your ladies like this. Addicted to this person, and we begin to slowly give them the power over our feelings, a yin-yang yo-yo. We begin with this push and pull of dopamine and cortisol is what it is. So this is why people get addicted to other people in these relationships with the anxious and avoidant. and also these codependent and narcissistic and these kind of things. Because the dopamine and cortisol that gets released when you're in fear, that cortisol, adrenaline, and these kind of things get released. And then, so similar to a trauma bond, exactly. All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Clayton. All right. So, yeah, trauma bond. Exactly. That's what I'm getting to. See, John London, you're on the same page today. So you may think that it's passion. Has anybody ever, it's all right, darling. Has anybody ever thought that that was passion? I used to experience that and I thought that this is passion because when they come back, it's that longing though. And so that's not passion. That's dysfunction. That's unhealthy. So when we know that some adults are okay with punishing other adults, we get to know if we need to set boundaries with ourselves and not be subject to that. We don't need to be subjected to that. So other adults may do this as watching their parents or others and feel that this gives them power. If you saw your parents do this, a lot of people saw their parents do this, I believe, is that one parent would seem to have power and then the other parent would want power. And so this power dynamic might have gone back and forth, or it might have been just one parent having power. So some kids may have, you fell for that once. Yep. Yep. I know. It's hard. I used to fall for it and I'm like, no, it does. It affects your central nervous system and your autonomic system. And so it makes us feel sick. It does. It will make our stomach feel sick, that digestive system. It will make us not be able to breathe. We'll feel like, I can't even breathe. And then it will also hurt our hearts. We'll say, I'm heartbroken. And so other adults may do this, as watching their parents and others feels this gives them power. So if they saw a parent that raged to get power, to get control in the house, then they themselves may rage and get power, or they may be the opposite. So this is the extremes. Geez, Jaded Wasteds, hello, it's good to see you. I've been good. How are you? Kim. Oh, the power dynamic. Yep. Kim's she's like raising the hand. When we see that, we can mirror that. We think that that's the way. Raising both hands. Yeah, I've done both too. Well, not really the yelling so much. I did one time, but then that person's like, oh, did that make you feel big? And I was like, oh, I guess not. So let me find my spot so I stay on track. Some people associate loudness and tone with power, and we need to know if we're triggered by it. I love my Desiderata tattoo because it says in that poem, avoid loud and aggressive persons for they are vexations to the spirit. And I do. I avoid loud and aggressive persons. They scare me. So these relationships sometimes end and leave one person feeling as though they cannot trust themselves to pick their relationships, so they're afraid to love again. Geez, Jaded Wastes, I've been great. Thank you. A little overwhelmed because I've done an impulse buy twice. Oh, darling, I was just talking about that earlier about why we do that, but it'll probably come up because I have the recap here in the end. So, yeah, I was talking about that. We have buyer's regret too, don't we? Yeah. I forgot what I was saying about that. I'm moving along in my notes, so I will maybe address that here in a minute. But yeah. So, avoid to protect your peace. I know sometimes, though, we need to walk away to protect our peace. But we may not get what we deserve, right, John London? When we walk away to protect our peace, we end up losing our stuff because it's just like, you can't put a price on peace. I hope this don't have a wrapper on it. So sometimes it's like, I know that I've walked away from stuff because it's been like, I can't put a price on peace. Let me take a drink of water. So we feel like we cannot trust ourselves to pick relationships sometimes. So we're afraid to love again. So somebody asked me to talk about this. I know that feeling, but also the desire too. The only way to have a healthy relationship is to heal the unhealthy behaviors and admit only what your part was, what my part was, what your part was, when we take ownership of our parts and heal that. We don't heal by saying they. We heal by saying, I felt like this when this happened. And then somebody may say, well, when did you feel like that before? And you may have to dig. It may take years of digging before you finally get down to that core about, oh, this is why A does this to B, and then this turns out to C, and then we can figure it out. So we need to heal those unhealthy. They're not just going to go away. And we can't expect that when we say to somebody, I talked about this the other night, the manipulation, saying, well, I was cheated on before in a relationship, so I'm going to keep tabs on you and I'm going to stalk you and I'm going to do this and I'm going to make you feel uncomfortable as hell because I was cheated on. Hello, Bernard. So we can't do that, because if somebody didn't do it, we can't bleed on people who didn't cut us, as that saying goes, right? So admit the only part that was yours. Did you listen? This is a part in relationships. A lot of times these relationships starts and did you listen? And here we go, John Lennon. Were you trauma bonding in the past by making things up to excuse and romanticize past partners' control, emotional unavailability, insecurity, their addiction to chaos, and you're trying to rewrite the story and maybe even fix them? This is how a trauma bond goes, right, John London? I call them high conflict people, like when people gossip negatively about others, they do it to you as well. Absolutely. Absolutely. So when we're talking about the trauma bonding, it's about by making things up. When you meet a person, this happens a lot, or you may even be deep in a relationship. It may be a push-pull relationship like what I talked about earlier. But when we didn't learn to use our words as children, we tend to make things up, to use our imagination, but we think that it's reality. So we may be excusing these red flags. We may even be making excuses up, romanticizing, those past partners, control, romanticizing it, emotional unavailability, insecurity, their addiction to chaos. And you're trying to rewrite the story and maybe even fix somebody you can't control. The addiction to chaos resonates for sure. It's in their heads. Absolutely. Some people are addicted to chaos and it's hard for them to realize. And I used to be in it too because it was familiar, but it didn't feel good. So in working with people, it's like, what feels good? What doesn't feel good? Is life always going to feel good? No, life isn't always going to feel good, but I can choose how I'm going to feel as a response to life, not a reaction to pain. Absolutely. Been odd. It's a huge chain reaction, keeping all that hatred and anger inside. It will unintentionally or intentionally affect other people in your work or at a grocery store, and it's all starting in the mind. And that's a good point, Bernard. Yes, absolutely. I know when I was immature, and I was immature into my adult years, is when I was mad about something, then I would have a bad attitude, just have a bad attitude. And it didn't serve me and it didn't serve anybody else. So it was learning to be in charge of my own attitude because it didn't feel good. So when I'm talking about, well, what feels good and what doesn't feel good, this is how we get to choose. I told myself the other day, yesterday, as a matter of fact, I went and ordered a cake for a birthday this morning. And, at the sweet place, I could have gotten a brownie or something. And I thought about it for a minute, but on the way home, I was walking and I was like, I made good choices today. I used to tell my kids, make good choices. And then walking home, I felt good because I made a choice that aligned with me. Because if I would have picked that brownie, like was said earlier by Juice Jaded Wasteds, I would have had brownie regret later and I didn't need the brownie. So when we realize the power over our own choices and choosing what we want, like if our bank account, Juice Jaded Wasted, I talked about that the other day, if our bank account is not looking so well, and then we go and buy something, Are we choosing peace? Are we choosing peace? Are we choosing freedom? Or are we choosing to be unhappy with the choice that we made? I recognize I've been much happier without drama, and some people thrive on. I know that's true. I stopped seeing people who I think would think are full of themselves and influence me to do good. Good. I'm glad because yeah, it's about our choices and that discernment because I don't need to judge those people because they got their own path, and I one time was one of those people. And so I'm not trying to judge them because I know that they don't want to be judged any more than I want to be judged because I used to judge those people, and I used to judge people like I am now. And it doesn't serve. There's no point. So as long as I'm not judging. So healing begins when we get to take an honest look at the beginning, middle, and end, not to romanticize or make things up after the pain has disappeared a bit, but taking a realistic look. You're happy when you eat sweet treats? Me too. I got to have a piece of that cake this morning. I felt much better eating that piece of cake this morning that I didn't have to still be carrying that guilt from that brownie yesterday. I like sweet treats too. But healing begins when we begin to take an honest look at the beginning, the middle, and the end. So, not to romanticize or make things up after the pain has disappeared, because this is another reason people trauma bond is when the pain starts lessening, they start missing that dopamine and cortisol. And so they get back in it, thinking, or second guessing themselves. Jason Stillwell, I used to be that way when I was upset about things. I'd have a bad attitude. Now that I'm getting older, I realize that all it did was drain my energy. So now I just try to let things go. Yeah. Yeah. Because again, it goes into our body language, right? It will go into our body language. So we're walking around in our energy. So, if, we'll repel people from us and then we'll get mad that people aren't talking to us. That's the way our human selves work. So, all right, let me look at this, get back on track. Taking a realistic look, when we step back and allow some time and space, when we take a realistic look, did this person tell you that they aren't in the relationship type? I've seen people that have said that they're not in a relationship. They're not the relationship type. Those aren't my people because, we're all having relationships, whether we realize it or not, of some sort, not necessarily sexual and intimate, but everything's. So anyway, when people, when you meet somebody and they say, I'm not into relationships right away, then I know that they're scared of relationships. I don't know if I would want to be in a relationship with them, but I already know, and I'm listening, are they scared of relationships? Well, yes. So if they told you they're not the relationship type and you go forward and think that that's a green flag instead of a red flag, if you want a relationship and they're telling you they're not the relationship type, then there's a problem. We may want in my youth, maybe I wanted somebody so bad that if they told me that, I would be like, green flag, but I'm going to be different. I'll be the exception to the rule, right? So did their actions tell you that? Some people, may say one thing, but they don't have time for you. So meaning, did they need a lot of the opposite sex to validate them? Some people don't want somebody who has to have a lot of, man friends or a lot of girlfriends. Some, for whatever reason, they can be insecure or not insecure to have man friends and girlfriends. You know what I mean? So it just depends. I'm not saying that it's necessarily bad or it's necessarily good, but some people who are insecure want a lot of the other opposite sex around to make them feel like they're to build their ego, to protect them, that they have somebody else to fall back on if this doesn't work. That means they're insecure. If this doesn't work, then I've got this to fall back on. And then some people, just the couple may feel like, okay, this is cool to have both. And so it's just whatever your preference is. But if you're with somebody and you don't like them to have friends of the opposite sex, if you sense that they're insecure is why they have friends of the opposite sex, this is about their self-image and how they look, then that's a red flag. So for some people that might be okay. It could be confidence or not. You have to go with what you feel and know if you're insecure. And then you'll know if they are. So if you know if you're insecure, you're going to know if they're insecure, because we tend to match energy. So jealousy is not attractive, but I'm not so sure that we all can't be friends. Jealousy is not attractive, but I'm not sure that we all can't be friends with old friends of the opposite sex. And if that feels comfortable to you, that's healthy. But if you're not comfortable with it, don't try to fit into it, is what I'm saying. It could be your red flag, and you're going to keep proving your insecurity. So getting to know ourselves, our likes and dislikes, and honor them is very important, so you will not later resent compromising yourself and manipulating someone to think that you're okay with something that you're not okay with. Binod, iron sharpens iron. If we make friends who practice wisdom and healing, we also begin to heal smoothly. If we make friends who practice ego, jealousy, and drama, insecurity, we will become like them slowly. That's right. That's right. It's hard not to. I have to separate myself when the stuff gets too dramatic and stuff. And I'll tell them, look, I think you might be addicted to some chaos, and I'm not going to co-sign that. So they know I love them, but I'll tell them, I think you're addicted to some chaos. So, and manipulating someone to think that you're okay when you're not. When you honor yourself, you honor others also, and they know who and what you are, and what what you're getting into or not when you honor yourself and others. So take yourself out and make a point daily to focus on yourself and your mood. If your mood is hinged on another person's behavior or attention, we are like the sum of our 5 closest people. Absolutely, John London, we are. Grinch is doing his little thing. Yep. So take yourself out and make a point daily to focus on yourself and your mood. Is your mood hinged on another person's behavior or attention? Like if you don't get somebody's attention or they don't behave like you want them to, is that going to affect your mood? If so, explore it. You may or may not have anxious attachment, and if that's the case, someone may never be able to give you enough attention for you to feel safe if they're not in your presence. Heal your anxious attachment, your fear of them leaving you, or that they really don't have the feelings for you that you have for them. Are you an avoidant attachment? When someone gets too close to you, find faults with them from your own wounds and are afraid of the imposter syndrome underneath. If they really found out who you are, and your own insecurity has you judging them for caring about you. I've seen this before, where somebody's insecurity will have them judging somebody. Maybe I've done it too, for caring about them, right? So if we want an honest and trusting relationship, it has to start with ourselves and learning to feel safe with self, so we're not giving others our power to punish, or power to punish us. That's what I'm trying to say. And we're not trying to punish either. These are signs of an unhealthy relationship when there's this punishing behavior going back and forth. If you're doing the punishing, or if they're doing the punishing, we need to learn to use our big boy or big girl words. So, I know sometimes we need to be quiet and process our feelings, but a relationship is 2 people. And you need to be able to be yourself and have your autonomy, and need to be able to use your adult words and say, I'm processing something right now. I care about you and I will get back to you. Doing this rather than ghosting is a healthy way, and that lets the other person know what's going on and feel seen and a part of the relationship, because there's 2 people. So you don't just take off. You don't just, it's like letting people, you want to feel safe in the relationship? Well, we need to have that reciprocal. Stop giving people the business. That's right, Kim. Stop giving people the business. Jason Stillwell. I was addicted to chaos for years, but now I'm back in college full time, and I don't have time for chaos. And now I find I'm more happy with my own success and not validation from others. That is perfect. Yes, that is very good. I'm glad that you found that, and I'm glad that you're on the track and doing what's good for you. 100%, John London. Thank you. Thank you. G stated wasted. My fear of divorce makes me not want to marry my partner. I've witnessed my parents' friends' divorce. Is it part of life? Well, all right. I don't know, because I don't know you and your partner on an intimate level. Knowing what I know at my age, I'm not going to say the most positive thing that can be said, but I'm going to tell you the truth from my heart from what I think. Are you planning on breeding? If you're going to breed with them, I think that marriage is a good thing. But if you're not planning on breeding, I don't know about marriage. I really don't. I know that some people have happy marriages and things. For me at this time in my life, that's not I don't mind committed relationship, but marriage, you know, divorce is scary. And I've been divorced a couple of times, and that could be what part of my thinking is. I would never say never to getting married again. With the same time me saying unless you're breeding, I just don't see a point in it. But I wouldn't say never because I don't know. I might fall in love and be all romantic, and they may want to get married, and I might say okay. I don't know. It would depend on the person. So without knowing you and your person, I would say you definitely need to heal the fears of divorce, healing the fear of divorce to get married. Because I think it could be very beautiful for you, G's Jaded Wasteds. I don't regret my marriage. I don't. Even if it ended in divorce. So that may not have answered your question too well, but without knowing you and your partner and the differences, John Lennon, I agree fully with that, Stacy. For kids, they need a stable environment. Yes, marriage is just a piece of paper with tax and residency perks. Exactly. Exactly, John London. Yeah. So, yeah. I don't know. I hope that was a little bit helpful, Juice Jaded Wasteds. All right. So, I'd use our adult words if we're in a relationship, no matter whether you're married or not married. If you're in a relationship and it's a partnership, it's about being able to say when you are hurt about something, because it may be that the person could, help you. But if you speak to them from the pain part of your body, it could sound like blame. Because when our inner child speaks, it's like, you didn't talk to me or something. You know how it may sound is when our inner child speaks. So to be able to speak to someone nurturing in a male-female relationship, the communication is different. And so I'm not saying that it's always this way, but a lot of times, a lot of males just want us to get straight to the point. And when we're processing as females, then it could seem to take a long time to get to that point, So it's good for, guys to have guy friends to process things with and girls to have girlfriends to process. And even some guys may have girlfriends to process things with. Girls typically, a lot of girls don't like that though. They don't want you processing their stuff with another female unless they know that female and trust that female, because just like the advice Cheese Shaded Wasted asked, is that the partner, whoever they may be, may not like that. So it's two people in a partnership. Communication is hard and almost non-existent in a lot of relationships. It can be. It's something that two people have to work on, right, Kim? Is it something two people have to work on? Because I do believe this is why the marriage thing is like 12, 13 years out in a marriage. Oftentimes, and I think a lot of the causes of divorce is that people quit seeing each other as we're partners, right? And so in the beginning of a marriage, people are like, oh, we're all partners. But then you get down 12, 13 years later in the marriage, and then people can think they're actually enemies. They can think that this person's undermining me and this person's undermining me, and they don't and get into that they thing. And that's codependent talk. So they get into this routine and this rut and this codependency. and maybe the codependency was there all along, but we will get sick and tired of some of the things, even in codependency, of giving our power away. We'll get sick and tired of some things. And so we have to work on that in ourselves, because relationships are built on trust, and trust is built on healthy communication. We're just roommates. Yeah. There's a lot there to be said for having companionship, because there's some relationships where you can have sex but no companionship, no relating otherwise. And when we're dealing with people, this can be the case where there's somebody who has sex but no companionship, and then somebody who has companionship and no sex. So how do we bridge that? That's another video, I think, because I think I've got to work on that some more. So this can be a lot of it, is that figuring out what do we want and how can we get there between both parties. Because if you have a relationship where one person's working on communication but the other person isn't, then that can't really carry and sustain the relationship. I mean, it can, but it's a partnership. So if you're angry, same thing, pause. Okay, what did I say? But relationships are built on trust, and trust is built on healthy communication. If you're angry, same thing, pause and process. We have to acknowledge that if we're a part of an unhealthy relationship, that we had a part, even if the slightest. So we can change harmful relationship patterns. Change always needs to start with us. We need to try to control, we need not try to control or punish another adult. That's not going to serve us. So as we close tonight, I want to leave you with this thought. Punishment doesn't heal pain, and it never has. Okay? Punishing another person. Yeah. Let me write that down, Kim, so I remember. What do we want and how do we get there? Let's see. What? Hold on, y'all. This is why I have notes here, because I'm writing notes here too. All right. So, punishing another adult doesn't heal our wounds, and punishing ourselves doesn't change our past. It only keeps us living there. So if you've made mistakes, and we all have, take responsibility and make your amends when they're needed. Making amends means that I apologize for and regret my behavior, and I'm working on it, and then actually working on that behavior, not doing the same thing over and over, because this is why I'm sorry, just a blanket I'm sorry does not work. Thank you. Thank you, darling. I don't get to see what we printed out though, so I had to write it out because I don't get to see that when it replays, I don't think. Yes, yeah. Thank you, John London. Yes, like my past video on designing a boyfriend and girlfriend relationship. See, you were paying attention. Exactly. Exactly. We got to know what we want. I asked somebody earlier today, what do you want in a relationship? Yes, Lewis Evans, I am from Texas. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. So, what do you want in a relationship? Because that's how we end up just settling if we don't know what we want. What do I want? And not just blanket statements. What does that look like? What does this look like? What does this look like? So that I'm not just trying to make somebody fit into a mold, or I'm not trying to make myself fit into a mold. Uh-oh. Oh, Jason took his message back. I thought, Kim, did you take Jason back out? He took his message. Okay. So, punishing another person doesn't heal our wounds, and punishing ourselves doesn't change our past. It only keeps us living there. So if you've made mistakes, and we all have, take responsibility. Make amends where they're needed and learn the lesson, and then give yourself permission to grow. Carrying guilt forever doesn't honor your past. It only robs your future. Okay? So if someone else continues to use your past against you after you've taken responsibility, I see. I saw you didn't. He retracted it himself. So if someone else continues to use your past after you've taken responsibility, ask yourself if you're allowing them to control you through guilt. Same if you're doing it, using somebody else's past to punish them. We don't do that. We don't do that. Thank you, Lewis. So, G's Jaded Wasted. You have a lovely evening too, G's Jaded Wasted. I'm glad you got to be here. Was it helpful at all? I hope it was helpful. Jason Stillwell, that's why I don't apologize. I admit what I did, why I was wrong, and say I'm taking responsibility for my actions. Absolutely. That's very commendable, Jason Stillwell. I'm glad that you do that. All right. So if someone continues to use your past against you after you've taken responsibility, ask yourself if you're allowing them to control you through guilt. Right? After you've taken responsibility, are they still trying to control you through guilt? That's not accountability, that's control. You don't have to participate in that anymore. So if you've been the one trying to punish others through silence, withdrawal, anger, manipulation, or control, be honest with yourself. What pain are you trying to avoid? And what wound still needs your attention? Healing asks us to look inward and not outward. So real power isn't controlling another person. Real power is learning to regulate yourself. It's setting healthy boundaries. It's communicating honestly. It's choosing peace over punishment. It's trusting yourself enough to walk away from what no longer aligns with what you want, or trying to create in your life. So the goal isn't to become perfect. The goal is to become aware, just to be aware. So when we are aware, we stop repeating patterns that once controlled us. So tonight, ask yourself, where am I still punishing myself? Where am I expecting someone else to pay for my pain? And what would it look like to choose healing instead? Remember, your past may explain you, but it doesn't define you. You're not your worst mistake, and you're not what someone else says you are. You are who you choose to be today. So I want to thank y'all for spending your Friday night with me. We had a great room in here tonight, I believe. Thank you, Kim, so much as always for moderating. I hope this was helpful for everyone, that if it helped to validate you. Maybe you've been trying, you've been working on something, and it helped you feel like, I'm doing it. I am doing this, And so, yeah, I hope that it was helpful. I love that we get to meet here. Thank you all who've subscribed to this channel. I think you probably are all subscribed to this channel. If you haven't, I hope you'll consider it. You are very welcome, John London. I'm so glad that it was. You're going to get you some blessed and regenerated rest now after we do our breathing. Geez, Jaded Wasted, you're still here. Thank you. Thank you for honestly answering. I've had this sort of idea, and I do agree with John London. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Iswood. Hello. Good evening, Iswood from France. We're about to breathe. So you got here in just the right amount of time to breathe and go night-night. How's that? So when we breathe, we do the regulation and cell regeneration on relationships. I think people need to break the rule on friends and start looking at your best and closest friends as partners. Everyone that's made 50 years say they're with their best friend. That could be true. I think that you really need to, remember that best friend thing, because your physical self is going to that's what I'm trying to get over there with John London, and who else was from Europe, trying to get over to Europe, Iswood. That's why I'm trying to get over to Europe before my body starts giving out, I want to go places and do things. And so, yeah, it would be nice if someone was able to go places and do things. JR, we are about to close tonight. You made it in time for breathing, though. A 360. I don't know what that is. All right. Hello, Recycled Londoner. We are about to breathe and close this evening. Well, I'm glad that you made it for the breathing, JR. So we're going to regulate and regenerate. John London. All right. Here we go, y'all. We're going to breathe. Remember, breathing all the way into your tummy, holding it if you can for 4 counts, and then releasing gentle and slow, because we all want some gentleness and slowness. We don't want to be rushed and hurried. All right? All right. Here we grow. Take a deep breath in. This is for the United States, it's freedom. So whatever, but it can be freedom for any of us anywhere. I'm in Mexico, but I'm still free. So let's breathe in freedom and peace and hold that and how that feels. And then just release any tension, anything that doesn't serve us, any thoughts that may stop by that it's like, where'd that come from? Here we grow. Take a deep breath in. Hold it. And release. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. Breathe. Hold it. Release. Last one. Breathe in. Hold it. Release. Was that 4 or 5? I think it was 5. I have 8 tattoos. All right, y'all. Are y'all ready to have a good night and to sleep well? I know, Rodolfo. I'll be back on here Sunday, you all. I'll be back on here Sunday at 9 a.m. in the morning, 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. So I hope to get to see you soon. I love you too, darling. I love you too, Kim. So, whoop, zap. All right. Y'all have a good night, okay? Get you some blessed and regenerated rest. Good night. Good night, Rodolfo. Good night, Jason Stillwell. Happy 4th to you. Good night, John London. Good night, Kim. Good night. I think G's Jaded Wasted's left, but good night, everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight. Okay? All right. See y'all Sunday at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. Bye. Bye, Lewis Evans. And JR. Good night. Rodolfo. Bye, freaks. Good night, y'all.